Stay insane in an insane world. Greg Harden, he knows a little bit about that. He joins us here at Scoopy Radio. Brother, what's going on?
Man, life in the pursuit of happiness. I'm excited just to meet you, a young man who's just been doing what he does better than most.
Listen, man, when you said the pursuit of happiness, I started thinking about that movie, but you are living that in print. New York Times bestseller. It's kind of an encapsulation of what you've done, being a Michigan Wolverine, impacting lives of others, but also staying within the sports realm. Why this book?
Well, this book, the timing is kind of it's poetic.
Mm-hmm.
We're going through quite a few changes socially, but most importantly, we've even gone through a pandemic. And during the pandemic, I had a whole lot of time.
I heard something like that.
And I had a great opportunity to really think about my legacy and how many people have been asking me over the years to share what I taught them and how it might impact the world. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in the fourth quarter, my brother. I'm in the third period, if you like hockey. I'm in the last few minutes, the last 5 minutes of the second half of the basketball game. It's showtime, baby.
So are you up 10? Are you up 20, up 30? What's it looking like in basketball terms?
Oh, man, in basketball terms, I think we're winning this bad boy, but we are not going to take our foot off the pedal.
What about in hockey? What's that looking like?
Ooh, bruh. We're not going into overtime. We're going to crush them right now.
All right, in football, what's that looking like?
Man, it's fourth quarter, and the last quarter determines who's in shape and who ain't. Okay. And I'm in shape.
Okay. So Detroit is where you're from. Michigan is where you went to college. And you started out working for the Wolverines football team in a team manager capacity. Am I correct?
No, sir. I never worked as a team manager. I was a guy who was working in a drug treatment program as a social worker, clinical therapist, and got a call from the university asking if I would be willing to do a lecture for the football team. And I suggested that they find someone else. And they said, what? I said, this is Michigan. I went to Michigan. Love Michigan. I said, yeah, but this is Michigan football. Hey, that's so great. Love Michigan football. But what you're looking for is someone to come in and do a 20, 30-minute rah-rah, we love you, just say no. And so you can mark it off on a box. That's not what I do, but I can give you some names.
So no, you weren't the manager, but you managed to find your way into a situation. See what I did there? You managed to find your situation into impacting the lives of others from just say no to utilizing relationships, natural, organic relationships into writing. Something you do a little bit well. Who first latched on to you in that Michigan Wolverine program?
Well, as strange as it may seem, there was a guy named Ward Manuel who is currently the athletic director at the University of Michigan, mm-hmm. who was identified as one of the number one. And he was the captain of the All-American high school team that used to be sponsored by Playboy magazine. Mm. And he was so good. He was one of the rare people that you would look at and say, this boy is going to play on Sunday. Well, just so happened his shoulder and God had a whole nother plan. Okay. And all of a sudden, football was over. He had a career-ending injury, and he was chronically depressed. But most importantly, we had built a relationship based on the fact that this young man was from New Orleans, and he came to party. And he showed up at Michigan, and he was having the time of his life. And he ended up in my office because he was recommended to come and sit and talk to me about his lifestyle. And Ward Manuel told me, Scoop, I don't need a shrink. I need someone I can trust and I can believe in. And you're either going to tell me that you're a real person and talk to me like a real human being, or I'll come, but I'm not going to say anything to you.
So, baby, the relationship in Louisiana sprung its way into a fruitful friendship and more. I'd be remiss if I did not ask about the book that you wrote with a young Tom Brady. How did you get Tom Brady to trust you?
Tom Brady had watched me, and he was thinking about leaving the university, and he had seen what some attributed to me as a transformation for Desmond Howard, and he and Desmond, of course, went on to win a Heisman Trophy. So Tom was intrigued by that and said, "Perhaps you can talk to me for a minute because I really don't want to leave." As many people as he was going to leave. No, he really didn't want to, but he was thinking about it. So he sat down with me and he looked me dead in the eye and he said, "I want to be the starter at Michigan." And I looked at him and I said, "Can't help you with that, brother." That's not my lane. I said, "What I can help you with, if nobody else believes in you, you'll believe in yourself. And that's where we can start. And if you're interested in that, I got some time for you." And he said, "Let's go."
I feel like somebody like a Tom Brady, it's a slow burn, it's a slow process. It's not the fast food, it's the home cooked meal. As it relates to just success, tenacity. You look across sports, you look across entertainment, you look at Michael. You knew Michael was good. We didn't know Michael was necessarily going to be Michael Jordan as he is now. Sam Bowie was who some thought Michael could have been. However, when you look at somebody like Tom Brady, to have lasted as many years as he did, to reinvent yourself, to stay consistent, takes a level of focus. Did he have that at Michigan?
Now, let's think about it this way. I mean, you open the door. Tom Brady was a 19-year-old kid who was hungry and desperately seeking an opportunity to simply get on the field. And what I saw in him prior to all that was a kid who was attentive, who was able to not only just be hungry and passionate, but he was humble enough to ask for help and to allow his ego to surrender and receive advice and support and help. That was a major accomplishment. This was one of the most coachable individuals I ever met in my life. This was a guy who said, just let me know what I need to do and how I need to think differently. And so it was a guy who developed himself over time. We would have to put it before iPads and everything else. We used to have to ask him to go home and stop looking at film because this boy was a student of the game. How many 19-year-olds are a student of the game who are studying it from every angle, who's studying defenses like no one you've ever seen? This is a 19-year-old kid. A 19-year-old kid who you look at and you say, you've got to make a tough decision, son. You've got to decide with or without football, your life is going to be amazing. What am I saying to you, Tom? Scoop B.
Yes, sir.
He looks at me and he says, "You're telling me that I'm more than a football player." Okay, go on. He then says to me, "You're telling me I've got to decide that football is what I do, not who I am." I said, "Okay, son, what's your name again?" "I like you. We can work together." This boy was brilliant, man. This boy he was so mature and so sophisticated. And then here's the question. Did you know that he was going to be? No. Anybody that says they knew is exaggerating or lying.
Sure. No, and I think that's significant because I'm more fascinated with the making of the man than the man is cool, but the making of the man is just as important because, a lot of people say, you build a house from the ground up. The difference between the ground up and the sky down is interesting. In the instance of you can't just appear and it's a mansion one day, brick by brick. You gotta see what the house creates. And I think, the videotape watching and stuff is so significant because I feel like we dissect Kobe in those same ways. Like, I know that when Kobe lived in Italy, he would request tapes of Isaiah Thomas. He would request tapes of Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and he'd watch them. You know, he didn't necessarily watch the games live. They didn't necessarily have on demand back when he was coming up like they do now. But the fascination of what life was like before iPads, as you mentioned, before cell phones and social media is interesting. I'm interested to know what Tom Brady was like as a Michigan student with pizza boxes or Gatorades and amongst other people. Like, to me, that's interesting because I don't just want to see the mansion. I want to know what the brick looks like.
Man, you're spot on, because this was a young person who you had to believe in.
Sure.
I mean, not as a football player, but as somebody that you could trust and give them everything you had. And he was open, and he was hungry and passionate to learn. And that's what you saw. You knew that he could be successful, but how successful was no way you could understand. But his mindset and him training himself to be the absolute leader that he became. He had this high-pitched voice. He was skinny, undersized for Big Ten football. And bro, when he opened his mouth, everybody would listen because what he projected, and you trusted him with your team. And that's how it works.
I like that. Desmond Howard, I feel like Desmond Howard and the Fab Five, to me, were two of the best things that ever happened to Michigan football and basketball specifically. Say what you want about the Fab Five, but at the same time, the impact of Jalen Rose, Juwan Howard, and Chris Webber was what it was. My question is, was working or being around Desmond Howard like being around a rock star?
As a matter of fact, it was very different because, I mean, when he blew up, I mean, Desmond was so small, he could infiltrate academics, and he would wear a shirt and tie and a little briefcase he would carry to class, and he would pretend he was not an athlete. And and because of the way stereotypes work in the world, people would assume that you must be an athlete. And you say, I play tennis.
For real?
This true story, man. Desmond will confirm everything I'm telling you. He would go to class and work his little heart out trying to be a student. And then all of a sudden he blew up and he couldn't hide anymore. All of a sudden everything changed. Desmond was a guy who was absolutely invested in creating an image that was going to destroy prejudices and stereotypes. This was his intent. I mean, he went and visited Dr. Harry at Edwards when he was a freshman to get advice and to get a different way of seeing the world. This guy was crazy good. Did not get on the field in the first year was because he definitely knew he was Magic. His nickname was Magic because he could play basketball, and it could, I mean, come on. He's what, 5'11"? He's dunking, and they loved him in Cleveland as a basketball player and a football player. That was Dez was the guy. I would sometimes have to run interference for him because I told Desmond, you're never to be the bad guy. Have people around you whose job it is to say, you've got to go. And every now and then I get in that role. And because this guy, he loved Muhammad Ali. He studied all those types of people. He studied stars because he knew he was going to be that guy.
No, and hearing or knowing that his nickname was Magic at 5'11" is the antithesis, height-wise, of Magic Johnson, who stood 6'8", 6'9".
So that means this boy could project, and people believed in him, and that's who he remained that guy. And look at him today; everything he touches turns to gold. Who on special teams is going to be the MVP of a Super Bowl?
Let me ask you a question. Jamal Crawford was at the University of Michigan. Did you have much interaction with him when he was there?
Oh man, I love Jamal Crawford, man. He was one of the nicest human beings I ever met. I mean, you talk about heartache. When he had to move on, it just broke my heart because this kid was getting ready to transform Michigan basketball again. It was going to be the rebirth of Michigan basketball. Jamal Crawford.
What was his game like in college?
Jalen Rose.
Hmm.
He was a pro player before he was a pro player. He could see the whole court. he just had an instinct, man. And I have to bring up Jalen because, bruh, talk about a cat. I don't think people really understand how good Jalen Rose was. Jalen Rose was one of the best athletes I'd ever seen in life. He was the alpha male on the Fab Five. Juwan Howard was the adult.
Yeah.
Oh, bro, you don't want to talk basketball with me, bro.
Yes, I do. Listen, man, you football through and through, but that maize and blue still bleeds basketball royalty too.
Bruh.
So keep going, brother.
Bruh. Jamal Crawford was an unbelievably talented athlete, but he was a good, big-hearted, he was just nice as all get out. And you had to like him. But Jalen Rose, you talk about a guy who transformed himself. You're talking about a guy from my neighborhood, Southwest Detroit. He was a guy that, man, you wanted to follow him. You trusted him. He had a pro game in high school and in college.
Tell me something. As a Michigan legend yourself, would you like to see both the Wolverine community formally and Chris Webber formally bury the hatchet?
It is overdue, but grown folks do what grown folks want to do. All I know is that Michigan basketball is legendary.
Yes.
And Juwan Howard is taking it to the next level. But the beauty of the Fab Five is it is not one person.
Sure.
It is not one story. I mean, if you don't talk about Ray Jackson, if you don't talk about all the characters that were playing on that team, you're confused. That was an unbelievable cast of characters. Jimmy King, Ray Jackson. Come on, man. Those boys were off the chain.
They were. And
so when you talk about the Fab Five, you have to talk about a whole group and not individuals. And so if them grown folks don't talk and connect, that it's on them, bro.
So I've heard a lot of stories about Camden, New Jersey, where Juwan Wagner Sr. played basketball years ago. His son's going to Kentucky, playing under John Calipari. And from stories that I've heard, Camden's basketball, their high school, was standing room only. It was very much a who's who there. You saw Allen Iverson there. You saw Jay-Z there. A myriad of people coming to see Juwan Wagner Sr. play. Comparatively, when you look at Michigan, at college, one of the best recruiting classes in the country. You saw a lot of people paying attention to the baggy shorts, the Huarache sneakers, the black socks, and more. What was, because I never have been, you have, what was the day in the life of attending a Michigan Wolverines basketball game?
It was an adventure. You had to buckle up. You knew that it was going to be showtime. And so the beauty of it is that you had peak performers. And that helps us segue straight back into the book. This book is not about Michigan. This book is not about Tom Brady. It's not about Desmond. It's not about the Fab Five. It's about you. It's about training people and teaching people how to get the most out of themselves. And that's what we did. And at Michigan, look at Juwan and Ray and Jimmy and all the cats graduating. Jalen Rose opening up schools and transforming lives. That's what this book is all about, talking about how people from all walks of life can be peak performers. They can be better at whatever they're doing. They could be better parents. They could be better friends. They could be better in terms of how they treat themselves, how they talk to themselves, how they can transform how they talk in their own minds about who they are and who they want to become. So it was unreal and amazing to be there in that era and see these young men transform basketball. Yeah.
And that's a good thing to hear. And yes, I don't want to make it totally Michigan focused. Thank you for segueing perfectly with that. But what I will ask is this: for the person who is looking to establish a level of motivation, establish a level of purpose, establish a level of being, what can this book do for them?
It can tell them a couple of things. One thing, it can tell them that what you've heard everyone recently willing to say, I want to be the best version of myself. You've said it, I've said it, we all said it. But how do you do that? How do you structure and deliberately and intentionally try to make that happen? The first thing the book teaches you is that you must become the world's greatest expert on one subject. You've got to train yourself to do critical self-assessment, not criticize yourself, which we're real good at, but be in tune with how to do self-evaluation, how to do self-assessment, how to absolutely commit to being self-aware and being mindful, if you like the popular pop culture terminology. But that means being able to stop wallowing in the past. That means stop future tripping. That means being able to focus on the here and now. What this book teaches you is that if you become the world's greatest expert on yourself, you learn to look at your strengths and not be afraid to look at your weaknesses and come up with plans and systems by which you can transform yourself. What this book teaches you, the human being is the only creature that God made that can decide, I'm not going to be the same today as I was yesterday.
Sure.
What creature can do? A dog going to be a dog. A lion going to be a lion. But a human being can change deliberately and intentionally, transform themselves, reinvent themselves. That's what this book is all about.
You know, it's interesting. The book Outliers, after grad school for me, changed my life, particularly when you talked about, or when the book discussed the 10,000 hours that people put into to become an expert in your field, and how you use numbers, the writer used numbers to kind of depict, like through hockey and basketball and strength in numbers, just a lot of just data. It was kind of like a fish. I took the good parts and spit out the bones, but I feel like the power in numbers, the power in being an expert in what you're involved in, and just the ability to utilize the situations you're in, whether in high school, college, grad school, or even just in a trade, whether you're a handyman, whether you're just a myriad of different things, how you use your time to better yourself. I think those are things that people throw around every day to kind of prove a point. My question to you is it more mindset? Is it more time? Is it both?
Look, you just set it up. Obviously you're a scholar because you just set up to see if I was going to fall for a false dichotomy. Baby, it's all of the above. It ain't no either or.
Yes.
You got to be a combo guard, baby.
Yes, you do. In today's game, you do.
Come on, man.
Yes,
you've got to train yourself to be able to have a mindset that sets it up so that you can give 100% of the time at everything you do. That's a mindset. Now, do you have to practice? Yeah. Do you have to train? Do you have to rehearse? Yes, you do. You've got to be diligent, and you've got to dig deep every day. Think about it. See, people don't know Brandon Scoop B. Robinson. Son, as a 12-year-old, you was kicking butt and taking names. You was in your mom and daddy's shop interacting with these high rollers in the real city. You understand? You were in Jersey and New York. Son, just the fact that you survived that tells me that you know how to invent yourself, create yourself. You had a sense of purpose. You were going to be in this industry before anyone else knew it. You knew it.
For sure. For sure. You did your homework. I respect that.
Bruh, it's what we do.
Yes, sir. You got to. Tell me something. Give me, with football season around the corner, with basketball season around the corner, give me 2 or 3 things that you do to maintain focus every day.
To maintain focus after that?
Just so you have athletes who are looking for ways to maintain a level of focus, or people,
Yes, sir.
everyday people, athletes or everyday people, anybody. With football season and basketball season around the corner, what are 3 things that people can use, that you may use, to maintain focus?
Well, what I use to maintain focus is to be real clear about competition.
Mm-hmm.
The greatest competition in your life is between your ears. I'm competing at everything, bro. I can't help myself. I compete with my wife for credit scores. Yeah.
Yes.
You understand? And so being able to train yourself to push yourself at things you don't even like is how I train myself, and what I teach, and what I will teach in this book. And let's look at Desmond Howard, for example. Desmond Howard came from high school, and he was that guy in high school, and he was thinking about leaving. And again, I have that storyline where I say, Desmond, you were the guy in high school. Everybody was the guy in high school. Mm-hmm. Who's going to go to the next level is who's going to master their mind and understand that you can't measure your mind and they can't measure your heart. Let's talk about what you can do differently to establish yourself in this environment. This is a new world, and you've got to transform yourself into becoming the next level. Mm-hmm. So you teach Desmond, like anyone else, 100% of the time. Give me a concrete example. Desmond, what is it that you hate to do as it relates to training? I hate running. I hate blocking. I said, good. Here's your assignment. Your assignment is to pretend that running is the most important thing you could do in life right now. Mm-hmm. You're going to train yourself to stop thinking like a bloody wide receiver and train like an Olympic athlete. You're going to become the best athlete on the team. You'll finish in the top 3 at every category in your weight class. Desmond Howard during the summer. See, back in the day, in the late 80s, early 90s, we actually had summer. And so in the summer, when everybody else was partying and having a good time, Desmond Howard would run 10 to 15 miles a week extra.
That's good. Good.
And when it was time for tour days to come in August, he was laughing at the fools who were getting tired and broke down, and they didn't know who he was because they'd never seen that type of response from him. I told Desmond Howard, once a week, you're going to irritate, piss off the defensive coordinator.
Stay the plane, sir. Stay the plane. It's all.
You're gonna knock somebody out in practice once a week. Mm-hmm. Scoop, it got good to him. Because if you want to get on the field at Michigan in the 1980s, 90s, you better block or you're not getting on the field. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, I've got a guy who hated blocking, who hated running, training himself to give 100% at the things he doesn't even like. and that becomes a habit. So if you can do that with the things you don't even like, what's going to happen when you get to the things you love? So the tips, my brother, and how I treat myself, how I push myself. I mean, I never thought I'd be sitting up here chatting with Scoop B,
my man,
on radio. I didn't think I'd be a New York Times best-selling author, but I knew that I was going to give 100% at being an author. That's how I think. That's how I roll. That's how you roll. That's how the people who read this book will be influenced and inspired to think differently about themselves and how to become the next level player.
They got to pick it up either by listening, by reading it, and more. But which is easier? Is it better to read it on the plane, better to read it on the beach, or is it better to listen?
Bruh, they'll go to them false dichotomies. Individual difference is the name of the game.
For sure.
So if it's me, the way I operate, I'm gonna buy the book and I'm gonna have I'm be able to listen to it. You understand? Because some days I'm gonna sit down and just read my heart out, and some days I don't have time, but I'm gonna ride and keep up because that's how I roll. I want every option that I can get my hands on.
And make sure you guys check out gregharden.com as well. You can get all his information for his books, past and present. You can hear his wealth of stories. Brother, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you for this opportunity, man. I'm so impressed with you. So just keep being you.
My brother, I appreciate that.